There are some things that will make any and every relationship more healthy, more robust, more durable, and more sustainable. The list is not as long as maybe you would think, although it's not just two or three things. Peter in First Peter chapter 3 offers us a pretty good, concise list of things that can empower a relationship toward that kind of health. This is in chapter 3. We're going back to a verse we haven't finished with yet, verse 8. Finally, all of you be like minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Those are qualities that when you encounter a person who is of like mind, it doesn't mean that you agree about everything, but your basic values are compatible, and the way you view life, your worldview, is compatible. It may not be exactly precisely the same, but enough alike that you can say we are like minded, sympathetic people, people who just know how to love, people who are compassionate and humble. These people are magnetic in relationships. That's the kind of person I want to be. That profile is a profile that I very much want to be true of me. But here's the deal. That profile will never be true of any one of us accidentally. Now, some people's temperaments may lend themselves more to a kind of relational intelligence and maybe even a relational softness. But these things do not happen in a human's life without intention. And we've talked about like minded, sympathetic, and love. Now, I just want to say a couple of things about compassionate and humble. Compassionate people are in very short supply in the world. And one of the difficulties that compassionate people have, I can say this because I am to a degree a compassionate person, is that sometimes our compassion is overwhelming. I believe one of my spiritual gifts is the gift of mercy. I know what it's like to be with people that I don't even know and have a sense that they need something good. They need a word of encouragement. They need someone to come alongside. Every once in a while, especially when I'm on airplanes, I don't know that I've got this sign over my head. Sit next to me, I'll listen to anybody. But I just as well. Well, I don't think that's a bad thing, but I have to be careful with it. In my counseling, I've had to learn. My dad was a great help on this, but I've had to learn that I must not own the problems of the people that I counsel. When I first crossed the line over on that, and I realized that that was supposed to be the practice, it was a little bit comical. I was in my office and a conflicted couple, and they just are. I was only a referee for 45 minutes. I don't think either one of them took a breath in that whole time, and it was just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I couldn't even wedge a word in edgeways. At the end of our time, it was more than 45 minutes. I said, well, okay, we're going to be done for today, and I've got some good news for you. And everybody loves good news. So they were waiting. I said, well, it's probably good news more for me than it is for you. The good news is I'm not taking you guys home with me. Not in any way. You're not coming over to my house tonight for dinner. You're not coming over to watch TV or play cards. I'm not dragging your troubles home with me. What your troubles are your troubles. And I can help you, but I won't own them. These will not be mine. And they looked at me like I'd kind of slapped them, which I suppose in a sense I may have symbolically slapped them. Honestly, I don't remember whether that couple ever got any better, but I know I did, because my gift of mercy was tempered by the Holy Spirit and by my thoughts of how do I best apply this gift to be the most help that I can be. Compassionate people are attracted. They have a softness toward people who are sad, struggling, sorrowful, in grief. Compassion is, I think, a very powerful thing in our world, because the world as a whole, it runs at such a pace that compassion doesn't show up very often. I've learned that real compassion, godly compassion, the kind of compassion that Peter's talking about here, cannot be done in a hurry. You can't pop in and do 10 minutes of compassion. It just doesn't work that way. Compassion is an activity that you come alongside and you share in the emotion of that. That's why it's so difficult and so important that Christians learn how to share in the emotion, share in the passion, without owning the other person's compassion. In Galatians, Paul writes, "Bear one another's burdens and thus fulfill the law of Christ." Compassion is a very powerful and oh so useful tool for bearing one another's burdens. But Paul goes on, and just in the next verse says, but each one of you should carry his own load. So what do you think that means? Well, I think what it means is God's people are to be compassionate, are to come alongside and do whatever we can to help the person bear the burden of that moment. But each one of us, our burden is our burden, and we must bear it. Compassion. And then humility. Humility is a very difficult character quality for me. And it isn't because I'm so great at so many things. It's just hard to be humble when you're this good. You know, that old country and western song, "Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way." I'm not perfect in every way, and it's still difficult for me to be humble. Real humility is so incredibly healthy, useful, good. I don't have enough adjectives for it in anybody's life. And real humility, in fact, I believe that humility opens my life for the grace of God. And nothing, period, nothing is more valid, valuable, treasured for me than God's grace. See, pride is the opposite of humility. Our world tends to promote a kind of pride that I'm not sure truly humble people can buy into. And I'll just say it. As a truly humble follower of Jesus, we can't buy into it. The pride that says, tell them how good you are, prove to them how good you are, because how good you are, that's how you move up. You move, and if you don't tell people how good you are, you're not going to move up. You'll get left behind. So puff your chest out, step up, and let her rip. I don't want to be that kind of person. Well, honestly, I love being around self-confident people. I just don't like when there is this line between confidence and pride. And when it gets crossed, boy, it stinks. It it pollutes every relationship that it touches, where humility enriches. It beautifies every relationship that it touches. So what is humility? Well, humility, years and years ago, a senior minister, when I was just a young kid in my early 20s as a youth minister, had a terrific definition of humility. Humility, he said, is knowing what I'm good at and being willing to gladly do it when appropriate. It's knowing what I'm really good at and being willing to do it when it's appropriate. False humility probably knows what it's good at, but it wants to be asked a lot before it will do it. You see, you know what's at the root of false humility? Yeah, if you said pride, you get 100% on that pop quiz. In fact, I'm going to give you 1,000,000 extra credit points for that. False humility is just a version of pride. It's a little more socially acceptable. It's a little less blatant, perhaps, and it comes out of insecurity. I'm about a B grade guitar player. Don't ask me to play the real complex chords, and I can't play lead. I don't know how to do it. But I can, if you just want to sing some courses and praise songs and stuff like that, I can do it. If I make you beg me to go, come on, Steve, play for us. Would you? We want to do the. No, I'm really not good enough to. I can't do that. Oh, please. Well, can't you find somebody? There's a lot of people better than me. Why don't you ask Mac? He's a lot better than, that's, why would I do that? I am begging them without begging to tell me how important I am to this thing, how good I am, how they need me. And the other side, and this is a dark side of it, is I want them to feel the need deeply, so that when I say, well, okay, and then I do fine, then somehow, in some broken, twisted way, that's supposed to make, and I suppose on occasion it does make me feel better. It's a really immature way to live. Humility, in fact, requires tremendous maturity. The older I get, the more convinced I am that if I could put one little thing as, okay, what is the one thing that is most important for a person growing in, and here's a religious term, a Bible word, growing in their sanctification, growing in their walk with Christ. It would be maturity. Learning so that I can see the difference between me and Christ, but I know his acceptance of me. And because of his acceptance and his value of me, I now have value enough to step into whatever life presents me. And I have the power of Christ at work to help me do whatever is needed in that situation. There's more to it than that, but humility says, I know what I'm good at, and I'll be glad to do that when it's appropriate. Humility says I have, and this is Paul in the book of Romans, says each one of you should have a sane estimate of himself. I love that. That's what humility is. Humility doesn't deny my weakness, my inadequacies, my inabilities. But it doesn't, on the other hand, it doesn't deny my abilities, my adequacies, my competencies. It's in the middle, and that's what makes it so difficult. Humility. Compassion and humility. if that could become two of the strongest marks for God's people in the world, don't you think the message of the gospel would become magnetic? Because the carriers of the gospel are both compassionate and humble. Wow. Well, contemplate your own life. Be observational. You don't have to be judgmental. That won't help you. But observe your own life. How are you doing with compassion and humility? Well, I'm just about to run. I have run out of time, so I'm going to shut up. I love it when we get together this way, and I hope I get to see you again next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.